This is an Audio Wool original.
This episode of Frightday is brought to you by Spring-Heeled Jack Coffee. You need great coffee. Jack delivers. Visit springhieldjack.coffee.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you'd like to support us, go to patreon.com/frightday.
As I ask the spirits if they can tell me where my voice is coming from, the ovulus says evil scent table, even though scent is spelled with a C. Is this saying that evil is being sent to me as I sit at the table?
That was weird, you guys. I said, do you know where we're at? Do you know where this voice is coming from? And it immediately said table, scent evil.
Table evil?
Table, scent evil.
Are you serious? Holy crap.
I'm sitting at the table.
What is the chances of that?
Right? Sitting at the table.
Zak Bagans.
Biggins is...
When we were bouncing the idea of covering him like 6 months ago, do you remember why?
Because I'm obsessed with him and I have been forever. And some of our writers are too.
Well, yeah.
A lot of people are. And honestly, I think the other thing for me is you...
Yeah.
and Sam have always mocked him, and I've always defended him.
Well, he doesn't make it hard.
This is true, but God, I've got so much to say about that.
What are your personal feelings about Zak Bagans?
Well, my personal feelings aren't dramatically different from when I started this process, but they are much more well-defined, and I feel like the gut feelings I had about him are now rooted in evidence-based justification.
Well,
he's great.
Aside from my severe skepticism of the paranormal, my distaste for Zak is, for the most part, I'll admit, aesthetic. The shiny black button-up shirts, if it's a tee, you better believe those graphics are large and irregularly placed, Ed Hardy-esque crucifixes, the Dep-Tend hair or flat bills, the complicated pants. That's been a running bit on our show, Kelly, you know, for years.
Oh, yeah.
And although in my research, I've spotted cargo pockets, there's certainly been pinstripes. But we may have unfairly accused him of wearing zipper-covered baggy bond pants.
Completely unlike you and Sam, you guys have dramatically exaggerated things with poor Zak's outfits over the years.
I typed Zak Bagans bondage pants into Google image search. It's a ghost town. Neither a strap nor non-functioning pocket to be seen anywhere on my screen. Disappointing, slightly earth-shattering. However, I found something interesting when clicking from the images to the All tab provided by Google. The top results led me to a string of tweets from @Zak_Bagans over 10 years ago on August 9th, 2011.
Interesting. It's my sister's birthday.
I got 4 tweets here. The first. I'm a zany, sometimes dorky goofball that loves my job, my friends that I film with, and my fans. I wear tight t-shirts and baggy jeans. And the actual reality is my t-shirts are size extra larges. I just can't help they fit tightly. And it's usually out of shape people who give me shit. And I'd say loose-fitting jeans, because I don't wear those EMU punk. I believe he meant emo, by the way, and I've omitted several spelling and grammar errors.
It's okay, it's okay.
Emo punk skinny jean legs that look like socks on your legs. And goddammit, I love hearing when people talk about my hair, my wardrobe, and my personality, because it's a hot mess. LMAO.
Yep.
It seems his personal style has shifted a bit since then. The shirts remain tight, but the jeans have now followed suit, still black and now skinny, like leg socks, which, socks are only on your legs. And whether Father Time or a more sinister encounter is to blame, one which, I don't know, we might talk about later, Zak has added some large black-framed glasses to his hot, messy wardrobe. But I want to back up to the first tweet, the one before the defensive insecurity kicked in. The one written by a zany, dorky goofball that loves his job, his friends that he collaborates with, and his fans, which he unquestionably has many of. Maybe that's the Zak that I've been blind to, distracted by his superficial, in my opinion, corny approach to supernatural investigation.
Oh, I'll give you some psychological background for that. You just wait.
While his pants may not be, under all that black clothing and muscle, is it possible there's a complicated man? An empathetic artist looking for connection and understanding? Maybe after our two-part discussion about Zachary Alexander Bagans, my critical opinion of him, much like his personal style, will do the same. Not become tighter on the bottom half, but come into focus and evolve from seeing him as a rather dense paranormal grifter using his massive wealth to buy unproven beep-boop machines and murderabilia that I am quite jealous and upset about, to a passionate enthusiast of high strangeness on a mission to risk his personal health, both physical and mental, in the line of demonology duty, to pursue and share knowledge about life's greatest mystery, what happens after we die. More humbly, and in his own words, the ones that open his program Ghost Adventures, he set out on a quest to capture what he once saw onto video. A ghost he came face to face with.
Well, I got that story for you.
That made him a believer. Has he done it? Is there proof? Who are the friends he's doing it with? What did he come face to face with as a child? Who is Zak Bagans?
Bag.
It's time to find out. But first, I'd like to welcome and initiate some members of the Frightday Society.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
James H. You paid for the whole dang year. Welcome to the FDS. We're going to need you to...
Oh gosh.
Maybe Photoshop some complicated pants on Zach?
Or
Some Jinkos, maybe?
Or I am really trying to find information about what Zach studied when he was at a couple of different schools. And if
Boring.
you can call them and find that out, that would
Well,
be
give
great.
him a call. Also, I need you to Photoshop some Jinkos on Zak Bagans' body. Contact Frightday.com. Brian T., he did the same dang thing. Thank you and welcome. You want to make calls, or should we just say Photoshop some more stuff? Doesn't need to be jeans, just Photoshop Zach.
You don't need to Photoshop Zach.
Send it to me, dealer's choice.
I want you to tell me your 5 favorite things about Zach.
Byron.
After
Okay.
listening to this episode.
Oh, that's very nice. And Shadow Pixel gave a bit more, making themselves part of the inner circle.
Oh boy, inner circle. Okay, I've got a really good one for you then. I want you to research the apartment in Trenton Zach had his very first much referenced paranormal experience at.
Oh, okay.
And I want you to see if you can figure out anything about who died there.
That's very interesting. Also, Photoshop, or maybe they could tell us their own ghost adventure story. It's kind of fun.
Oh, yeah. You mean True Tale?
Yeah, True Tale would be cool.
Yeah,
Let's
love
do
it.
Well, thank you guys so much. If you value our show like these folks do, and you want another episode each week, as well as hours and hours of bonus programs, and much, much more, consider joining up at cult.frightday.com. One of those much, much mores that I'm considering, Kelly, I mentioned this when I came in this morning, would be me recording the first, I believe, 2 chapters of Zak Bagans' book, I Am Haunted, Living Life Through the Dead, because I reread them again. Probably,
yeah.
I think it's the 3rd time, and it's just a hoot.
Yeah, and I have to say his book Dark World is pretty good
You're
too.
into it?
Yeah.
Like good in a bad way?
No,
I think
good.
we have different goods in this situation.
So for me, this is good in terms of being pretty insightful. It's
Okay.
helped me get like a pretty firm, this is who Zach is, at least, guess.
Do you think one of your goals is to change my mind, like I said here? Like in a Steven Crowder kind of way?
I mean, I feel like I don't even need to.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time that my opinions on someone that I found douchey had shifted. I shamefully used to think that Guy Fieri was just a donkey sauce slinging, smash mouth listening waste
you
of TV
go.
space. I personally think that he's not only like one of the most comfortable and authentic hosts working today. If you've ever watched Triple G, I feel like you would quickly agree with me, but he's like an incredibly genuine and caring person. He's passionate about people and food, just like maybe Zach's passionate about people and ghosts. maybe...
No. He's very passionate about people.
I don't know.
And ghosts.
Did I tell you at the beginning of the pandemic that Guy Fieri, he launched something called the Restaurant Employee Relief Fund?
Oh, God, he's so nice.
They raised $25 million to help struggling food service workers.
That's incredible.
And around 60% of the grant recipients identified as female, and half of those people were racial minorities.
That's a way to go. Oh, my gosh.
And when California was on fire, he prepared meals for firefighters.
He's so nice. See?
Didn't use it as an opportunity to, like, help his name. He just
Which is
rolled
why you
up.
didn't know about it until you dug in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
His Triple D show highlights restaurants that may have otherwise been overlooked, and Triple G is just a fucking good time. So I've said too much, but I have similar feelings about the Jersey Shore Boys when I finally watched that show.
Are you going to try and tell me that they don't suck?
They don't. I really think you should. Yeah, it's
Okay.
Well, I mean, they've evolved as people too. The situation is sober now. He did his time for tax evasion, and I just think he's a delight now. And Pauly D's a sweet guy, the Keto Guido. But yeah, I'm sorry, Kelly. I've been wrestling with a lot of feelings in preparation for this report. So where does it all begin for Zachary Bagans?
Oh my gosh, Byron, I've got so much to talk about. And this is going to be the stuff that you probably aren't as well versed in as what we talk about next week.
Okay.
So please chime in, but there may be less chiming in this week than next week. Who
very
knows?
curious.
I could be wrong. So Zach was born on April 5th, 1977 in Washington, D.C., of all places.
Nation's capital.
Yeah, so you're going to see some recurring themes with Zach in this report. I'm going to give you 4 things that I'm going to go ahead and say 99% positive about when it comes to Zak Bagans. All right, number 1, he's very self-conscious. Always has been.
Well, you saw the tweet I opened with.
Yeah. Number 2, he had a relatively challenging childhood for some reasons that are clear and some that remain obfuscated.
I think Jacoby Shaddix from Papa Roach may agree.
Yeah. Okay, well, there you go. Number 2, he suffers from anxiety, pretty bad anxiety. Number 3, and this is the part that's going to play heavily into next week, too, because it's when we start talking about his more in-depth paranormal research. He is not at all a liar. You can criticize him for a lot of things. I do not think Zach lies.
I don't want to start by being negative, but ignorance also.
Yeah. No. I
Okay.
agree. But I think what Zach says, he's pretty genuinely behind. Okay?
You know, the Q shaman believes that there's children trapped in
I don't
deep
think he
underground military
actually
bases.
believes that, especially listening to the way that he's handled different circumstances he's been in the last year. I think he's full of beans. I think Zach is not full of beans.
All right.
Right. So almost immediately after Zach was born, by his statement, when he still had a pacifier in his mouth, his parents divorced. And this is something, though he goes into a lot of detail about his childhood, this is something he doesn't highlight. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about things that he says about his childhood and what that reveals, but also things that he has not spoken about regarding his childhood and what that might reveal. And any reason for the divorce is, I think, a pretty important element that is left out from every single interview or detail I can find that he's given about his
And
childhood.
you have those details?
Yes.
Oh.
So right after his parents divorced, he moved to Clearwater, Florida with his mom, his older sister Meredith, and his stepfather. Stepfather pretty early on, maybe his mom was cheating, I don't know. But I think that he has some pretty undying loyalty to the people in his life, and so he's very hesitant to say negative things about his people. Right. So even if this was a formative part of his childhood, and we're going to circle back to this in a little bit, but his mom, who shares a name with your mom, ironically, Byron, Nancy.
Don't taint the name.
I'm sorry. She's a great lady. We're going to get into this.
Clearwater, though, that's is it the home of Scientology?
It is. It is indeed. And I think this is an important element because he was raised in kind of a weird place. His stepdad was the deputy chief of police down there.
Oh, okay.
Though he talks about his first paranormal experience happening in his 20s, there's actually something I had never heard about before that happened to him when he was a small child. And Byron, there's an image that he drew of this experience that's going to be in the show notes of this episode, of course. For those of you who have watched The Secret of Nim or read Redwall.
Jesus. Okay.
It's going to look a little familiar to you probably, but here's how he describes this experience. I think all adults tend to look back on their childhood and think they were a little strange. I'm not that naive. I don't think he's using them properly, but that's okay, Zach.
Don't worry about it.
So I'll break it down into more pragmatic terms. I was visited by a large, dark creature that didn't look human. It rifled through my drawers and tossed my belongings around my room as I watched from under my covers. Still to this day, I can draw an exact, detailed sketch of what this animalistic apparition looked like. It sounds silly, and I never revealed it until I was an adult, but it happened. As a kid, I had no idea what the paranormal was and didn't care. All I knew was a supernatural intruder visited my room, so I remained scared and motionless out of self-preservation until it left. It could have been the product of an overactive mind, a true elemental trying to force me to leave his house, or just mischievous elf who needed underwear.
My God.
It even left me items under my pillow, like a maniacal tooth fairy. Truthfully, at the time, I didn't care what it was, as long as it didn't harm me. Okay, so this, like, right off the bat, weird.
It is weird. It's also, I think, it's interesting that this is a detail that he came out with quite a bit later, considering the opening of his Ghost Adventure show. He talks about how he began believing when he became face-to-face with this thing as a child. This goes before that.
Yeah, and this is, he, for some reason, because, like, he throws out, as he said, he thinks it could have been an elf, an elemental,
The fuck
whatever.
is he thinking? I mean,
But
I guess
he doesn't think it was a ghost. So his other experience, which we will get into, was very clearly a ghost, a spirit. And so he's not sure what this was. So that's why he doesn't count it.
I guess that makes sense. I was about to just straight up say it makes sense, but
It really does. He liked comics. You know what his favorite comic was as a child?
I don't.
Ghost Rider.
Flamin' Skullhead Motorcycle Rider.
Yep. He was also obsessed with Dracula. Put a pin in that one.
Well, I know one of the items in his museum, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Well, for a whole lot of reasons, put a pin in that. Dracula will return to a few times. But as I was researching this, I'm starting to pull out some, like, holy cow, I'm a little like Zach.
No,
like, I had weird recurring dreams about something in my room as a child, or at least at my window. I was also obsessed with Dracula, dressed up as him a lot.
And there's going to be a... Do you
Some
want to do
photos.
that now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're going to have a side-by-side comparison of Zach as Dracula and me as Dracula as children.
And that'll be in the show notes of this episode.
At Frightday.com.
Yeah.
But here's where things got really weird when I was figuring out Zach's childhood, noticing some synchronicities here, okay? In his biographical writing, Zach describes two vivid dreams and inclinations or things he was drawn to as a child. Number one, there was a recurring dream that he was a deckhand on a colonial-era ship crossing the ocean. There was some note about the captain of that ship being named Kelly.
Oh, fucking God.
Not really, but I'm adding that because
Oh,
it's
okay.
fun. Okay.
I thought it was just an, like an Irish...
Here are his words about it. I'm never me, but rather someone else in 18th century ruffled garb, caught on the deck in a roaring nor'easter. First of all, great quote, Zach. In his dream, he would fall into the water, drifting and trying to stay afloat while he watched the ship sail away without him. It's because Captain Kelly doesn't stop for anyone. He said each dream ended with him finally no longer being able to keep his head above water and sinking into the depths.
Was this story from... I didn't read this in his book. Is this from Dark World Into
It
the
is.
Shadow with the lead investigator of Ghost
It
Adventure,
is.
Zak Bagans?
It is. So maybe this was because he spent boatloads of time on the beach in Florida, or maybe it was because a Scientologist got a hold of him early on but wasn't able to get all those thetans out. I don't know. But he talks about being afraid of all the shark attacks in the water, haunted by this nightmare about Captain Kelly's ship leaving him to a watery death. And he's got this very strange relationship with the water as a result.
I
Okay?
was unaware that reoccurring dreams or night terrors are something that I should be thinking of as reality.
Well, there's something you should be thinking of as a possible indication of something your subconscious knows, but your conscious does not.
I don't...
You don't agree with that?
Well,
oh, you just wait.
Dreams
Okay.
are dreams, Kelly. And also, I mean, if you're more interested... Well, not if you're more interested. We've mentioned Scientology twice. I think it would be
yeah. It was a
rude
good-
of us to not point back to Scientology month that we
Right,
did.
the closest we ever got to being doxxed, I think.
Oh, yeah, that was intense.
It was
And
very
we do have
spooky.
suppressive people pins
We
still.
do.
So
I love
check those
mine.
out at shop.frightday.com.
So the other strange sense, pull, draw, inclination, memory he got as a child happened whenever he drove past a creek or a cave. He had an immediate reaction of wanting to go panning. Gold panning.
I mean, kids love gold panning.
Hold on.
Okay.
He felt more at home in mountains and along creeks. He says that his very first ghost adventures experience, Virginia City, Nevada,
Which we'll talk about.
oh yeah, was likely driven by this possible past life connection. Here's his quote. Later in life, I found myself walking through Virginia City, Nevada, getting flash images of me mining. I tasted dust from the desert and knew I had been there before. I could see my coworkers, guys with beards. I felt the vibrations of the pickaxes hitting the walls of the mines. All I wanted was to do my prospector dance.
He didn't say that part.
He didn't say that last
Yeah,
part, but
that
do you
makes
see
sense.
the connection?
I guess.
got it?
Yeah. Well, okay.
All right, very important. Kind of an awkward kid growing up, right? Started high school in Florida. Had no idea what he wanted to study, but he had interest in broadcasting journalism.
Mm-hmm.
Even thought he might want to be a weatherman.
I can see that.
Now,
He does have kind of weatherman vibes, especially if you look back to the,
yeah.
I guess the Wheel of Fortune thing we'll be talking about.
Oh, yeah. Yep, we'll talk about that. This is the first time in any of his quotes about childhood where I start to see symbols and indications that he's got a significant inferiority complex surrounding education. Okay. He takes one of two very clear stances on anything educational.
Is he still in Clearwater at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
When giving a retrospective on his life, he either talks about his unmitigated success or the complete lack of worth of whatever program he was studying. So either it was great and he kicked ass, or he left because it was worthless.
This is a bit of a trope. This is like the Breakfast Club. Like, I'm smart, but no one understands me.
Well, kind of, but also I think it's the idea that he's not comfortable admitting that there were any shortcomings to his educational approach, right? Like, it's this idea that the way he looks back, and again, I think it's important to note, I don't think he's a liar. I think this is the narrative he has when he looks back on his childhood and anything educational. It was never that it just wasn't his thing. It was either a good program or a bad program.
Depending on how well he did.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
and I don't mean to say that like a bitch. I just think it's a pretty natural inclination to try and rationalize and justify anything that you feel like was a failure to protect yourself from that feeling of failure.
Weird. I wonder what you do outside of this podcast.
Yeah, a lot of that. Zach has talked about at this point in his life, he got good grades. All right. But he
Okay.
doesn't elaborate beyond that, which I think, again, it's the absence of information that I find interesting in some of
Sounds like
Zach's
a B
reflections.
minus talking to me,
Could be.
right?
Could be.
Okay.
When he was 15, he got his very first set of push-up bars, though.
Oh, no.
Okay. Now, as much as I want to mock the hell out of him for the way he describes this,
I did enough for the both of us.
well, right, and I think it's pretty normal and natural for a teenage kid who's skinny and feels out of place to gravitate towards building muscles as a way to feel kind of like more in control of
He
his
wasn't
life.
always a tight XL, folks.
Right. Well, and he obviously has a lot of traumatic childhood experiences that made him feel vulnerable, and he was an outsider. As an adult, he's dealt with that by leaning into the outsider vibe and trying to make that part of his identity, but also
Desperately wants to fit in.
right, and feeling less vulnerable by being physically strong.
That's a good one.
Okay, I think that's what he's doing here. I don't think it's a bro-y thing as much as it is like a defense mechanism.
Maybe those are just characteristics that come with the territory.
Could be.
Because, I mean, he wears flat belt baseball hats.
I know. There's some things, right?
He lives in Las Vegas.
Well, Vegas, we're going to, yeah.
If he wasn't a paranormal investigator, I could see him being a pickup artist.
Okay, so the three primary places he's lived, Clearwater, Florida, Detroit, Michigan, Las Vegas.
Well, you skipped one.
Which one?
Chicago.
Well, that he actually was there for 6 months. So
Okay,
we're going
well.
to talk more about that in a minute.
Yeah,
All right.
I wish you would have told me that sooner because I spent a lot of time in Chicago.
I'm very sorry. I'd only discovered in the last 4 days what time frame he exactly was in Chicago. Well, I can tell you this. He spent a lot of summer vacation, would go for a few weeks to visit his dad
That would
outside
make
Chicago.
sense. Are we
Okay?
going to talk at all about that or should I talk
We are.
about it now?
No, we
Okay.
are. We are. We're going to get there. Don't worry. So here we are. He's 15, pretty vulnerable, starting to try and lift weights to get less vulnerable.
You know what I did? I dyed my hair.
Well, there you go.
I dyed
Sam
my
grew
hair.
his hair long, right?
Well,
Like
you do
you
something.
do things. Yep. It's just
And I
this
became
weird.
so cool.
Yeah, when
I
you're
scootered. I was really big
You
into
scootered.
scootering.
interesting.
I could do 360 tail whips and shit.
Okay, that's actually really amazing.
Yeah, I
could
jumped
never
my
scooter.
friends with scooters and stuff.
All right. Well, you had friends, so that's good.
I had a band.
I'd never had a band.
Yeah.
Zach has had bands.
Ooh,
In
yeah,
1994,
We'll talk about that.
just as he was ready to start his senior year of high school. Okay, so again, it's not the things he says, it's the things he doesn't say. So he never says anything disparaging about either parent, from what I can find. All right. His mom and stepdad, right before he starts his senior year of high school, decide that they're going to move from Florida to Lake Tahoe. Not a super cool move as parents, right? Like, wait it out one more year, dudes. Like,
Florida to Nevada?
yeah. And like at a pretty vulnerable point for this kid, right?
Yeah.
Zach says, screw that. I'm going to go to Chicago to live with my dad and finish out high school because,
My real dad.
right, because he had at least summer experiences there and had befriended a couple of kids during his time visiting his dad. Now, every article on him that I found seems to say that these were actually his step siblings or half siblings, but I actually think that they were just friends. So when I used to visit my grandparents, their neighbors were kids that were a little bit older than me, and I would become friends with them, right? Like during the times I was visiting them. And I think that this was a similar thing. Like he went to visit his dad. These were kids in the neighborhood.
Some
who-
another mother brothers.
Right. He like identified them as, oh, these are people that are a safe place for me in addition to going to visit my dad. So I'd rather be around somewhat familiar people to finish out high school than go to a completely new
strangers.
place.
Yeah,
right?
so I mean, maybe culturally, I bet it was someone maybe more in tune
Well,
with.
so Phil and Sky were their names, and they lived in Glen Ellen, which was a suburb of Chicago. Ironically, a suburb that I've spent time in, and I have a old friend who went to the next high school over from his high school, Glenbard West. Unfortunately, when I inquired with this person about whether he knew anything, he said, "Who the hell is Zak
Did you
Bagans?"
say he went to Glenbard West?
No. He went to the high school one over from Glenbard
Okay.
West.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, and Glenbard West is the high school that Zak Bagans went
It
to.
is. It's his high school. And Byron, I know you spent a lot of time
Well,
in Glenbard West.
I'll be brief. I did spend too much time.
sorry.
Well, initially I found Zach's yearbook. I tracked down his original yearbook.
Are we going to talk about that photo for a minute?
I mean, we could talk about the photo.
Well, I just think it's an interesting photo because, again, if you look at his photo compared to the other kids on the page, everybody else has those, like fun photo day photos where there's a
vignetted background.
Right. And it's not just a neck, it's like,
Chest up.
half of the chest
Yeah.
and up. And Zach has this oddly different photo.
It's cropped from the collar of the shirt up.
Right.
which
And I think this has something to do probably
it's a late arrival picture.
Well, it's a late arrival picture and it's an early graduation picture, which we'll talk about in a little minute. In
okay.
a minute, because he only spent 4 months at this high school.
it's going to be in the show notes episode of Frightday.com along
Yep.
with a bunch of stuff. But it's a very... I keep hitting my mic.
Sorry, I'm not even doing that today.
It's a very different Zach than you would imagine. Yeah. So, a bit of a goofball looking guy. Mm-hmm. After I found his yearbook, I started digging into his high school, Glenbard West, the one that he graduated from, and I found out something kind of interesting.
Oh, that Charlie Sheen's movie Lucas was filmed there?
I did find that out.
Okay.
But also,
Because Zach was real excited about that too.
I discovered a TV show called Yearbook.
Really?
Yeah, so it was a Fox Network documentary TV show. It was actually the first reality show. It's credited as the first reality show. A camera crew followed various students throughout the year and chronicled their school and home lives. It was pretty interesting.
Was it like traumatic home lives? Was this like...
It's drama. I mean,
But
there's
was it like
definitely-
sensationalized or was this when it was still like they weren't going to show anything too scary?
Well, there isn't entire episodes that I've been able to track down, just clips of episodes, but I watched too many of them.
Got it.
The content was like relationship troubles. Like
Okay.
one scene highlighted a kind of alt-looking person talking to a guidance counselor about his relationship with his girlfriend. He's like, well, I know that blank was in here earlier talking to you, and I don't know what she talked about.
Oh,
And
okay.
I'm
So-
worried that anything I say to her, she's going to talk about with her parents. So it was really like the beginning of reality TV.
But kind of also like 1950s style reality TV where we aren't talking about,
they aren't manufacturing drama for sure.
no school shootings or
No.
abusive parents or like things that are super,
The intention of the show is to make a real life version of a John Hughes film.
which makes sense.
And that's kind of what they did.
So they were really running with this idea of Lucas being filmed there.
Well, yeah, and speaking of gold panning, one of the quotes here is that the ratio of minute used was 150 minutes to 1. The creators, the executives, compared it to panning for gold, waiting for something to happen. Yeah, interesting. But yeah, I couldn't find Zach in any of it because turns out he was only in Chicago for 6 months.
Yeah.
And not the year that they were filming this television program, which...
Well, I mean, he may have been around there in the summers when they were filming it because he was visiting his dad.
All right, whatever.
I'm sorry.
If you can find one of the 9 episodes that they did release, let me know because it seems very interesting.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So here's one of those places where I think Zach might be skipping over some things, or like a lot of us do, as a defense mechanism, changing the narrative as an adult when you look back on choices you made as a child. So I don't think that it's anything dark or bad. I think maybe just some challenges he encountered in that move from Florida to Chicago that he didn't want to discuss. He said he graduated early because of good grades. So it's just not really a thing that happens unless somebody's really wanting to graduate early or get out of a place.
Intend to.
You do.
And a lot of people who do that are people who want to get a jump start in a college.
Yep. And really, graduating early has nothing to do on grades. It has nothing to do with grades. It's credits. Yeah. Have you fulfilled the graduation requirements? Now, it could be that the graduation requirements in Clearwater, Florida, were in excess of those in Glen Ellen. Though, based on my understanding of those school systems, the suburbs of Chicago have some pretty nice school systems. And so,
Glen Ellen.
Glen Ellen's like a pretty ritzy.
I saw it was in the top
location.
1,000 high schools in America.
So my guess is that the requirements there were actually in excess, and reading between the lines, I think that there may have been some challenges in this transition, perhaps anxiety-wise, because he does mention having some anxiety issues. In fact, he talks about his weightlifting being a way to deal with those as well.
Well, just like I run all the time.
Right.
Because I'm doing fine.
Totally fine. I mean, I eat, a lot of ambrosia salad, so...
Sure. Hey, ghouls. Do you like to get spooky and stay spooky? Then check out our podcast, The Golden Ghouls. Each week, we talk about our favorite things, ghosts and the paranormal. Sound like a good time? Then give us a listen on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Goodbye.
So he graduated in January of 1994 after moving there in September of 1993. So he was barely there, all right? And furthering evidence that he was leaving out something. You know what he did as soon as he was free of high school?
I don't.
Moved to Detroit.
Great idea.
And he didn't move to Detroit to start school, or at least on its surface, that's not what he did. He moved to Detroit to live with family, his dad's family, in a place right outside Detroit, Grosse Ile? I don't, it's embarrassing that I can't pronounce that, but
That's
I don't know.
okay.
He lived there about 8 months, and then he decided to start at Western Michigan University. Okay, so Western Michigan University is actually a pretty good school. Has an aerospace engineering program, which as a, admissions person, I nerdily recognize that as a pretty, there aren't many schools that have aerospace engineering. A lot of kids want to do aerospace engineering, and it actually limits their options pretty significantly to where they can go. It had been around for a long time, has a pretty strong background, including, and I don't know if this is coincidental or not, but we are recording this on Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. He was brought to campus at the height of the civil rights movement by students there. So Western Michigan had some, some play in the civil rights revolution as well.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty cool.
Is Western Michigan University, how far is that from Grosse Ile Township?
Right there, because
Okay.
I believe he lived with his family while he was attending.
I guess that makes sense, because I was looking at the population, and it's 10,000, so my thought on that was either small town or connected to a college town situation.
Yeah, it's technically in Kalamazoo. We should look at this.
Well, I think we spent a lot of time in Kalamazoo when we did John Norman Collins. Nah.
Oh, wait, no. Actually, it's 2 hours It's 2 hours away.
Okay, so-
Interesting. I wonder if they had a satellite campus.
None of that matters.
Well, it does matter a little bit in terms of my weird psychological assessment of him. But anyhow, sorry, I know, it's taking time.
No, I wasn't looking at my watch. I got a text.
Oh, okay. Everything all right?
Yeah.
Who else is texting you?
It was actually a tweet.
Okay, all right. He didn't last long at college. And college isn't for everyone. I think that's really important.
I left college after 3 months.
3 months? Well, you made it a lot longer than Zach. Zach left after 2 weeks. And here's the thing. Again, even though this is what I do in my real life, I do not think a traditional college is for everyone. That's one of the biggest problems our society has, is assuming that everybody should go
Graduate
for
high
college.
school, go to college.
Right. Like some people that's great for. Other
cool
people
path.
it is such a waste of energy and like puts them in a place where they feel like failures and it takes them years to get past that when really they just needed to follow a different path because that wasn't the right path for them. And I think
Sometimes you got to go on tour for 2 years.
well, which is great. Like honestly, to me that's way more productive than chasing something that isn't right for you. However, I also believe that 2 weeks is not enough time to determine whether something's right for you.
Certainly not.
Okay.
That's like a hello mother, hello father
Right.
kind
Well,
of stuff.
Unless it's an abusive relationship, I think 2 weeks is just not a normal trial period. All right. And the reasons he gave in his book for leaving, again, a bit questionable. Okay. So remember how I said it's black or white with him? It's either
I graduated early because of good grades.
or
It sucked.
it wasn't the academic work that made me so uncomfortable, but rather the overwhelming feeling that I was losing my identity in 2 weeks. All around me, I saw people whose goal in life was to commute to work, say hi to Sally, the secretary, sit in a cubicle, and pretend to be happy for 8 to 10 hours a day just for the security of a fixed income.
This is me in the mason jar, isn't it?
What do you mean?
One of the reasons I got annoyed by college when I was there was that one of my teachers drank water from a mason jar. And
You drink water from mason jars.
I know, you've said that same this isn't the first time I've told you this story. It's not the first time that you've reacted that way.
Okay, so, but here's the thing. I'm not going to judge you for it, Byron, because all of us do this, okay?
Yes.
Like, I left law school. I dropped out of law school. Now, it was more than 2 weeks.
It was a year, right?
It was a semester.
Oh.
Here's the thing. There are reasons that I dropped out that have everything to do with, like, yeah, it was going to be a really difficult course in life for me because the kind of law I wanted to study was not going to get me any paid internships, etc. It was also because I felt really lost at that point in time and had no idea
personal
what the hell I
turmoil.
wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it's totally okay to say that. And you don't have to justify it with mason jars or with assuming that everybody there wanted a miserable cubicle life because they didn't.
No.
And a mason jar is not a big deal.
And also, cubicle life for some people isn't miserable.
Right. But like, I don't know. In my experience in college, which was, a little while after him, very few people I knew in college wanted a cubicle life. Sure. Most people were going to college specifically to avoid a cubicle life so that they could have more say in their future. It's okay that Zach didn't fit in at college, but I think the way that he justifies leaving is another example of his...
Narcissism?
No, I don't think he's a narcissist at
Really?
all.
Okay.
I actually think he's super, super sweet and very kind, but I think he's very insecure. And those weren't things he was willing to admit fault with because he felt like that was just not okay. That he left because he felt confused and had no idea where he wanted to go.
Well, if he had, I wish he had a home life that let him believe that just because something doesn't work out doesn't mean it's a failure.
Exactly. It's huge to learn those things.
This is not the Zak Bagans episode I anticipated.
I know it's not, and I'm sorry about
No,
that.
I like
but-
it. It's good.
So he also couches a lot of these things with humor. Like when he talks about this, one of the places where I heard him, or I read him talking about this was, I guess you could say my mentality was like Peter from Office Space, although I would have loved to work with Milton and steal his red stapler.
Oh my God.
Right? Like cheesy jokes, which I love. Cheesy jokes are great.
I know
but
you do.
There was no risk, no edge of your seat, leap of faith into the unknown, no joie de vivre. Okay, like the guy quoting weird French phrases, not weird French phrases, common French phrases, but it's just not him. It wasn't me.
Sounds like he was afraid to take a leap.
It does. And that's okay.
It is.
Now, he says that his dad was disappointed with him when he dropped out, and that's the closest thing I can find to anything negative about his parents. I kind of agree with his dad that 2 weeks wasn't much, but...
Well, it's like quitting softball in week 2. It would be the same kind of thing,
Yeah.
Your dad would be like, come on, kid. Like,
Give it a shot.
You signed up.
Right.
You need to kind of push through
Right.
this.
And working with high school students, most people in their first semester of college experience a crisis and feel like they shouldn't be there. Now, a portion of them it's true for, but a lot of them it's such a huge transition. You have to let yourself go through that transition before you discover whether it's the right place for you to be after that transition or not. Anyhow, he also talks about this point in his life. One of the reasons his dad was upset with him was because he couldn't understand Zak's desire to do something that at least had the potential to be dangerous. And this is weird to me because Zak doesn't encounter the idea of doing ghosting until quite a few years later.
Yeah.
So leaving to do something that had the potential to be dangerous, I mean,
What is he talking about?
I don't know.
What the fuck is he
I don't
talking
know.
about?
And I've seen this in 2 different places where he mentions this, and I'm like, what? What do you mean by that?
Must be a gold miner.
I feel like this is another clue about why he really left. But we aren't, I don't know. Okay, so anyhow, things are a bit strained between he and his dad, so he leaves he and his dad's family with whom he'd been living, packed up, moved to Vegas, where at this point his mom and stepdad had apparently moved from Lake Tahoe. So this is only...
What are they doing for a living?
Well, Dad was a deputy chief of police.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he did that when he moved to Tahoe.
Could have retired. Police retire pretty...
But then they're only in Tahoe for a year because when he moves to Vegas, it was only a year after he moved to Chicago to graduate high school.
Yeah.
Anyhow, this is where he starts working as a DJ for weddings, also as a valet, but he has a really sweet quote. And this, when you said narcissist, this is one of those things that I think he's got a lot of little breadcrumbs about how sweet he is. One of them were some of those tweets that you read, right?
Well, I mean, he did kind of make fun of emo people and fat people.
Well, but I think those were defense mechanisms.
They certainly were.
Yeah. Anyhow, this was what he had to say about DJing for weddings. Although I didn't really care for the job, I recognized that it was an important day in many people's lives, so I took it seriously. Which is kind of sweet.
That is kind of sweet.
Right? He talks about liking music a lot, which we're going to come back to.
Yes, we will.
And then he also went to community college for an undefined amount of time, but I got the sense that he might have completed at least his first year because he says, I did well but found nothing but restlessness when I was accepted at UNLV. So a few things to unpack here. UNLV, pretty darn good school. University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. If he had been accepted, so the traditional path is if you go to community college 2 years and you transfer to one of the main campuses. So you don't apply until after your first year, typically, unless he had enough credits going in, which wouldn't have made sense.
Yeah, he didn't need to 2 weeks. So.
Right. So he was probably on track to at least complete his prereqs. But Nick Groff attended UNLV, got his film degree there.
Now, Nick Groff.
Well, this is Nick Groff of his Ghost Adventures partnership fame. There is a lot to unpack about Nick, and we're not going to talk about Nick tonight.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't even think Nick is mentioned in his book, I Am Haunted, though.
Well, when did that come out?
It must have. We'll talk about that.
It was post drama. Yeah.
That's kind of what I figured.
In Dark World, however, he and Nick were still on good terms. I can't find anything about whether he got his associate's degree or not, but the point is he did not meet Nick at this point, even though Nick was attending UNLV. It was about 1997. We had a brief detour at this juncture onto a very famous television show by the name of Wheel of Fortune.
And now we'll meet a brother and sister, at least that's what they claim, right here. Meredith and Zak Bagans from Las Vegas.
Hosted by Pat Sajak. Mm-hmm. Vanna
He
White's
was
there
on
too.
it with his sister Meredith, and he and his sister actually had a pretty good relationship.
They're already on your side. All right. Let's not milk it, Zak. You're both at UNLV, huh?
Yeah.
Well, let's start with Meredith, just because I'd rather.
I'm currently attending UNLV, a full-time student, majoring in communications with an emphasis in advertising.
Yeah, what do you hope? Do you do some modeling, right?
Yes, I do modeling as well.
Yeah, what do you hope to do eventually?
Advertising.
Oh, good. Well, that's why you're studying it, of course. I didn't get this job because I'm stupid. Although that was one of the qualifications. Zak is your brother, it says here, and we'd like to hear about you, sir.
I also attend UNLV, communications major, minoring in film. Mm-hmm. I'm also a mobile disc jockey here in Las Vegas, perform at weddings, and teach everybody how to do the chicken dance. So we have a lot of fun, so it keeps me busy, and it's moving me in my direction.
All right, well, good. And poultry is important.
Pat Sajak asked him what he did for a living, and he kind of freaked out, probably because
he's a little lost.
He's pretty lost. I teach everyone how to do the chicken dance.
And then he did the chicken dance, right?
Which is pretty great.
Yeah, and that'll be in the show notes.
Which was probably at least a little bit true because he did a lot of weddings and probably did the chicken dance at a lot of weddings as a DJ.
Well, I actually, listen, I've DJ'd a wedding or two.
And have you done the chicken dance?
I actually am talking with a bride right now who
About
wants
doing the chicken dance?
She wants her father-daughter dance to be the chicken dance.
Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah. But also, I mean, if Pat Sajak asked me what I do for a living, I might freak out. Too.
I probably would. I'd be like, I help kids get into college and teach them about conspiracies.
There you go. It's interesting.
So clearly, he leaves community college, probably after longer than he left Western Mich, but he's pretty lost. He's not sure what he wants to do. A lot of insecurity around education that he's covering with a lot of weird statements. My interpretation was he was just kind of like every other 20-year-old kid, no idea what they want, hopelessly adrift. He wasn't motivated to do something else. He just didn't know what he did want to do, and he felt like this doesn't feel right, so I'm going to try something else. He made a really strange decision at this point, though. He moved back to Detroit.
I mean, listen, if you are in Detroit...
I mean, Detroit, I'll give you this. Detroit's got character, right?
It sure
and some
does.
pretty crazy history. But my guess is he either got into trouble in Vegas or got into a fight with his mom and stepdad, hopped back to another place that felt like a semi-comfort zone. Like, he wasn't going to go try another new location. And I think that tells us something about him. He's going back to another place that, even though it wasn't a great place for him, it felt familiar.
Well, Andy has problems, obviously, with authority, and I imagine his stepdad being a former or current officer of the law.
Right. Well, maybe, yeah, it's interesting. Maybe that is the authority thing. I don't get nearly the rebel vibe from him researching him than I do when just listening to him speak. But this was a tough time for him. So he actually describes these as his roughest years from 1998 to 2002. At this point, he sold urinal screens and sanitation devices. He did some
urinal screens, like the things that hold in a puck that you piss on?
I don't really know. It could be
you're
like,
a lady.
But it could be a screening like, is this person doing drugs? Here's a urinal
I think when you
screen.
say urinal screen, I think it's literally you're a woman, so you don't have
I know what they are, though.
Yeah, I think it's literally the thing that keeps maybe the pee from splashing back while also containing a scent covering puck.
Well, either way... It's interesting that he talks about that. He did some landscaping, went back to doing a bit of valet work, and again DJing. But the job he held the longest during this period of time was an AT&T retail store salesperson.
He looks like a guy who would do that.
I know he does.
Oh no, with a polo and like the hair going up?
At this point, he also took his previous interest with weightlifting, doubled down.
Of course.
And got really into MMA.
Oh, well, listen, and I don't judge anyone on that. I just so happen to really enjoy fight sports.
Yeah, it's not my jam, but I'm not going to judge it. He says he traveled with his friend Dave Vitke to MMA tournaments. So I did a little bit of research on this Dave fellow, nicknamed the A-Town Ogre. A few years younger, I think 3 years younger than Zach. He was from Atlanta, but he didn't make his professional debut until 2002. So these years he was hanging out with Zach must have been, clearly before he went pro.
Dave Vitke is real. Like,
yeah, he's real.
He's like an actual
He hasn't fought
fighter.
since 2017, but he's real.
Oh, he's a Bellator guy. It wasn't UFC.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a different fight league.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he claims at this point he only weighed 175 pounds, but could lift more than his friends who were 50 pounds heavier. The fact that he never talks about what he studied, any of his attempts at traditional school, but he talks about this again. This is how he empowers himself, for sure, which there's nothing wrong with.
Well, he found confidence in his physical body.
Yep. Also, for the record, if you ever are in a fight with good old ZB, keep this in mind. This is how he says he prefers to fight. For the record, if I ever have to defend myself, I prefer to take a fight to the ground and pound my enemy out. It's a natural fit for me. So if you're fighting with Zach, just make sure that you don't let him get you to the ground, folks, okay?
Well, I don't believe that we've ever seen a police report. Like, we did a pretty extensive background search.
Did you? I thought that there was some kind of, criminal history.
Traffic stuff.
Traffic stuff?
I think.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think he's a bad guy. So he says that he and his friends at this time weren't out to find trouble, but trouble found them. This, again, aligns with this idea that he felt like an outsider and starting to maybe even find comfort in defining himself as an outsider, which I certainly can empathize with. So the darkest, most point in his life, the place where he felt the most lost, which feels like it must have been much worse than just people starting fights with him and working at AT&T. But the only thing I can find to give any further indication about what happened during this time were these words from him. Detroit is a rough town, and though I love it, I'm happy to be alive after some of the things that happened during that period. That book is closed, locked, and sent to the bottom of the sea, never to be reopened again. But those times made me strong and banished my fears of the physical world.
So what was the name of the township?
Gross Isle?
What popped up is Gross Isle safe? And it has a crime rate of 2 per 1,000, which is makes you the victim of a crime 1 in 468.
That's real high.
I'm looking at a map here of it's got a scale of safest to most dangerous, and that is where he lived.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I can't knock him for having that opinion of his.
Yeah. Well, poor guy. At this point, he follows his mom's lead when she enrolled him at the Michigan Motion Picture Institute.
I actually need to go back to the crime index. It does appear that it is very safe. It's just there's a part of that place which is considered dangerous.
I mean, and those locations are pretty,
So here's the average in Michigan, and there's Gross Isle. So it appears that it might just be a very nice suburb.
Oh, there you go.
The average of being, oh God, Michigan seems sketchy. Chances of becoming a victim of violent crime are 1 in 212 in all of Michigan, but in Gross Isle, it's 1 in 5,387. I think that Zach may have had a bit of a privileged upbringing.
Perhaps, but that isn't where he was brought up. That was just where his dad's family lived, that he lived with for periods of time. So his mom enrolls him in the Michigan Motion Picture Institute. Couple things interesting here. Number one, he hasn't talked, at least anywhere I can find, about being super interested in film earlier in life. Okay. Broadcast journalism, yeah. Meteorology, potentially. But just weird that this is what he's being enrolled in. Now, it could be because he was doing DJ for weddings, and maybe his mom thought, well, he could make more money if he was doing videography too, so let's do this. Mm-hmm. It's a 1-year program. It's a good program. It's not like he's, at NYU Film School.
No, this isn't a degree he's getting. He's a certificate situation.
And I have watched a quick interview with his mom, Nancy, from right before his haunted museum opened. She's actually an antique collector featured on Charleston Antique Mall's YouTube show.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Las Vegas, a city on the move. People come from all around just to try their luck and dip their toe in the pool of luxurious living. Just beyond the lights and glamour of the world-famous Las Vegas Strip is a place where real treasures are found. It's a place people come to claim a piece of history or reclaim a gem from their past. This is Michelle Tully, and she runs this place along with her son Steve. Now don't worry yourself none, she's not connected to the mob, not as far as we can tell.
Nancy, hi. Hi, Michelle. How are you? It's good to see you. Good. How's the museum coming?
It's coming along just fine.
Really?
Yep,
when's it opening?
In another couple months, Michelle.
Oh, my God, I can't wait.
It's been a long time coming.
Now, this is a haunted museum, right?
Correct, it is.
And where is it at?
It's on the corner of East Charleston and 6th Street, downtown Las Vegas.
That's that old museum, what's it called?
It was the Wingert home.
Wingert home.
Mansion. Yes, and we actually have, it has gone historical, and we're very, very proud of that.
Fun. This is Zak's project, isn't it?
It is.
And that's your son.
It is.
And
yes.
What's the name of his show? I forgot.
Shame on you.
I know.
It's called Ghost Adventures on Travel Channel.
Of course.
Yes.
She seems like a pretty sweet lady who loves her son, but it's hard to tell what she was like as a mother when he was younger and when she was younger.
She might be kind of capitalizing on his popularity a little bit.
Could be. Or she might, at this point, she probably doesn't have to worry about money. Maybe when she left Zak's dad for unspecified reasons and remarried and was raising her kiddos, it's hard to know if she was in more difficult situations, thus not able to access her best self, so to speak. Moving during her son's senior year of high school, again, seems like a pretty questionable parental move. Or maybe he was in trouble in Clearwater, Florida, and that's why she was trying to move. So I don't want to make judgments about her as a parent, but in this video, her as a parent of adult Zak, she seems to be pretty supportive and loving of her son. Now, when Zak hit the Motion Picture Institute, he finally found validation in the academic realm. His words, "I fell in love with the art of documentary filmmaking," which I think is interesting because his project was not a documentary like the one he did at the end of his time there.
Yeah.
And graduated with honors in an elite class. Okay, this is a 1-year film school.
Sure. Yeah.
But like, it's fine. Like, it's great. But the fact that he digs in on these details, he's clearly looking for validation in that area, which I think when people call him dumb, he's probably more insecure about that than anything else. Okay. Let me tell you, the Michigan Motion Picture Institute did not ignore the opportunity to highlight an alum's success.
I've been to their website.
They quote him all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
He is their poster boy. Interestingly, I have found a few places suggesting Zak might be on the autism spectrum, Byron. Okay? Now, this is something I probably overly ascribe to people, but honestly, I think it's super common, often undiagnosed. And people on this spectrum who are not diagnosed or who are diagnosed but are able to generally pass in society without recognition as anything other than neurotypical often have ways of compensating for anything that makes them stand out or feel out of place. For Zak, I believe this is muscles, hair, pants, and tattoos. And periodic, absurdly inappropriate statements about his academic successes.
Sure.
Now, his film, his graduating project for the Michigan Motion Picture Institute was Red Butterfly. Let me read you just a little bit of a summary. Red Butterfly is Zak Bagans' student thesis film from the summer of 2002 while attending the Motion Picture Institute. The film was shot on 16mm, centers around a vengeful father who seeks retribution on a boy who poisoned his daughter with a date rape drug.
And you better believe that we have that.
Oh, and you better believe that you will watch the whole thing.
It's 24 minutes long.
It is, but you want to listen to Zak's interesting statement about it? I went completely overboard with my final project, which was supposed to be a 2-minute film that I turned into a full-length movie with a 20-page script and local actors. So I suppose compared to 2 minutes, 24 minutes is full length.
I guess.
It's a substantial short film.
I've been submitted shorts that are longer.
Right. Well, there you go.
God, and it is lit very bad.
It is.
Wow.
I mean, it's 2002. It's old.
No, this is unacceptable.
Also, my guess is they probably don't have super expensive equipment at the Michigan Motion Picture Institute. Could be wrong. Maybe they do now that Zak Bagans graduated and they've got some status.
Maybe,
but
I don't know. From the looks of their website, they are...
Still not.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, at this point, he's feeling better, especially after making Red Butterfly, but he still feels like he hadn't quite found his place. And this is where we hit the turning point, all right? Now, this is something he references in every single Ghost Adventures episode. He talks about in most interviews that he does. So I'm going to read you his experience in his own words. This is shortly after he graduates film school. Here we go. I was living in an apartment building on the edge of Elizabeth Park in the historic gentrified district of Trenton, Michigan. In my apartment, I could feel the presence of something that was not inviting, but I actually liked it. It was like being in the gray, murky water of Florida again, by myself when most people ran for cover. 7 nights in a row during the summer of 2002.
Did he just call the waters of Clearwater murky?
He did. 7 nights in a row during the summer of 2002, a female ghost would scream my name, Zachary, at the top of her lungs. At first, I thought it was a dream, but then I realized it was happening and I could not control it. On the 7th night, she upped the ante to get her point across. I was lying in bed, face down, when she screamed my name and then pressed down on me so hard that I couldn't get up.
And wasn't this 3 a.m.?
Yes. I was pinned to my bed, unable to move, and started panicking. As strong as I was, I couldn't escape the weight she brought to bear on my back. Now, interesting, again, he has to reference how strong he is.
Yeah.
Also, this sounds suspiciously like a night terror.
Sleep paralysis.
When she finally let me up, I turned over and saw her looking at me. There was eye contact, and I felt a shockwave of energy from her. I stared at her, unable to look away. This spirit wanted me to see her, and to this day, I have not looked at an apparition that looked into me like this. I stumbled outside and tried to rationalize what had happened, certain I was going to die from a heart attack. It was an unmistakable moment that created a new dimension in my mind and opened it up to the paranormal. When there's a common threat, people become one and find a purpose together. I finally felt like I had a purpose in life. I was so close to joining the other side, but instead those on the other side created a path for me to avoid going over the cliff.
So this is the encounter that he references in the title sequence of Ghost
Every
Adventures.
episode.
Yeah.
Yep. This path led me to Las Vegas, which led me to where I am today.
Well, he'd already been to Vegas, and also if he
Back
knew
to Vegas.
anything about sleep paralysis at the time.
Right. Well, and listening to his interesting story about Rat King coming into his room as a child, I mean, that could very much be sleep paralysis.
You did forget to mention that it was actually like a large demonic image of a rat, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think I mentioned that, actually.
Well, you said it was reminiscent of Redwall or Fern Gully.
Yeah, and animalistic, and people need to look at the photo for sure, because
Yeah.
his drawing of it is amazing. But I do also want to flag that aliens have been known to look
All right.
as different creatures to small
Yeah,
children. So
yeah.
just something to think about.
Mostly owls, though, right?
Very frequently owls, but not always. I can imagine that they're probably... Zach wasn't real familiar with owls, I bet, but he probably knew a lot about rats. I could see that in his childhood. Like, not knowing owls, but knowing rats. Maybe that's why it appeared as a rat.
Yeah.
This is about where we're going to leave off for the day, because once back in Vegas, the Zach that we know was really born, and that's who we're going to talk about next week.
And he meets some friends.
He does meet some friends that feel like kindred spirits, perhaps for the first time in his life.
Kindred spirits.
Yes, indeed.
Well, Kelly, it's
Baggins
been a while.
is-
It's been a while since I've gotten to say this. Thank you so much for that report.
Oh, you're so
I know
welcome.
I was a little bit involved, but
It was great. Thank
yeah,
you.
What a good time. We're finally diving into the world of Zak Bagans. Not the spookiest of upbringings.
Definitely not the spookiest of upbringings, and also a more human upbringing with a lot of points of vulnerability
Yeah.
that I can identify with.
Kind of a relatable dude.
Yeah, he's a sweet guy.
But how
And-
he handled his struggles is interesting.
Well, and we don't even, again, like how much of that is how he really handled them versus his adult narrative of how he handled them. Because
Sure.
we all have different narratives as an adult about how we handled our struggles
with a
as
little bit
children.
of projection.
Yeah, a little bit.
Next week, we talk about the Zach that you guys probably know.
Yes.
We'll be back. But until then, Kelly, where are you going to be?
On Twitter at Kelly Frightday. Please email me with any of your own true tales, any stories about Zach, additional information. Did any of you go to college with Zach at any of the
Please,
times?
reach out.
Anything, please. Kelly at Frightday.com.
And I'm at Byron McKoy on Twitter and Instagram. Byron at Frightday.com is my email address. And until next Frightday, where we're going to be talking Scream.
Mm-hmm.
Very excited.
Yes.
I'm Byron.
I'm Kelly. Don't be judgmental.
And
Zach's a good guy.
Stay scared.
Yep.
On this week's episode of Behind the Screams, we provide commentary over Zak Bagans' student film, Red Butterfly, and it's in video. That'll be available Wednesday, January 26th at patreon.com/Frightday or cult.frightday.com. Join the FDS now to get access to over 60 episodes of Behind the Screams, as well as bonus episodes of Byron's Serial Corner, The Writer's Room, Toast to Toast PM with Wine Kelly, Captain Kelly's Cryptids and Conspiracies, as well as the first 10 episodes. Cult.frightday.com. We'll see you Wednesday. You've been listening to an Audio Wall original, produced by Byron McKoy. Theme music provided by Cemeteries. For more programs like this, visit audiowall.co.